Hey, today I'd like to talk about our choice of time and what calendar are we choosing to frame, to operate our lives in. And I've spoken many years ago and did a vlog about the Gregorian calendar, and that is sort of a calendar that has, I guess you could say, been imposed upon the world of modernity or modern society, as you may call it, in which majority of peoples within those societies operate today. And with that Gregorian calendar, it's generally not associated with the cycles of the natural world that we may live or feel we're not living so much in. And so I wanted to remind you of some examples of other calendars that other peoples and cultures around the world have used. And you know, when you look into things like the traditional ancient Chinese calendar, that was a lot more lunar focused. The cycles were based on lunar cycles. And it's similar within the Islamic, the Jewish, the Hindu, and the Buddhist calendars as well. They all had their own element of lunar cycles in their calendar. And then you've also got other ancient cultures. You know, we're talking here maybe about the Egyptian, which they often associated their cycles to seasons. And you're thinking about like the Mayan calendar, they encompassed 3 calendars, 3 time frames within their calendars that they were working with. And that was because they would have a shorter time frame, and then a bigger, and then a larger one. And so they were constantly working through these 3. And some of us today would say, wow, that's really complex, you know, how could you keep up with all of that? But when it's part and part of your culture, of the peoples that have lived, so many of them before you, and what you're preparing so far forward for as well, and it's all around you and that's all that you know, it's not complicated. Plus, it would often be associated with a lot of symbolism within the environment as well. Again, coming back to sort of the natural world and cycles. Then you've got things like the Sidereal calendars, which was based on a lot of star placements. Again, the ancient Egyptians often used that. Same with some of the ancient Greeks, and the term that we sometimes use, the Babylonians, they worked a lot with the Sidereal calendar, the star systems. And then you also have like the tropical astrological calendar, you know, Aries being the start of the year, Pisces being the end. I'm in Pisces season at the moment while I'm recording this, and when this is released, will most likely be Aries season, or at least the start, getting into that. So, you know, and for me, I don't resonate a lot with the Gregorian calendar, but I choose to partake in it because of particular things that I guess you could say I'm benefiting from in this time, but I'm also aware that it's not always a very resonant time frame for me to be working in. You know, especially when it comes to 31st of December, 1st of January, and it's like, oh, it's a new year, we make our resolutions and la-di-la-di-la. And for me, it doesn't resonate so well with me that time of the year for many reasons. I don't need to go into that here. So I don't tend to make New Year's resolutions, you know, 31st of December and the 1st of January, or even really anywhere near that time. I like playing around in this sort of Capricornian energy that time frame is in the tropical astrological system. And, you know, I do enjoy working with that sort of Capricorn Saturnian energy. Sometimes it's within a number of placements within my chart. So, you know, that being that sort of grandfather and like Lord of Time sort of archetype, you know, it can be good for creating visions and putting in practical steps of where you see yourself in particular time frames. However, the 31st of December and the 1st of January is not always like the only time to be engaging in that activity. When I talk about my ancestors and what I'm aware that they worked with, they often used what we would call the wheel of the year, and that was sectioned off into 8 different time frames, and that was all based on seasons within sort of northwest Europe. We're talking sort of like England, Scotland, Ireland, and their seasons that they had. And there was so many purposes and so many reasons they did that. I mean, to grow food is such a prominent part of thriving here in this realm at this moment in time. So a lot of it was also to do with, when do you plant? When do you attend to the garden in a particular way? When are you going to need to harvest? When are you going to need to store food? Because for a certain time frame, there won't be a lot that can be grown out of the ground. So that is one of the very many reasons as to why they work with that calendar so much. They did. I'm born in the land of Aotearoa, New Zealand, and from what I'm aware, the Māori culture, they worked with a lunar cycle. They had their own lunar cycle. For them, the start of the year is called Matariki, and that's in the winter. Well, we would call it the winter, but it would be the summertime if you lived in the northern hemisphere. And from what I'm aware, I'm in the land of Amaroo, Australia, and the original peoples here, they worked a lot with what we would call star systems and natural cycles for their calendars. And there was over 500 different mobs here, and they all had their own slight variations of how they worked with calendars of time. Just out here in nature. Somewhat, a little bit of nature. And when you do that in the land of Amaroo, Australia, yes, nature sometimes does not like to leave you alone. Wants to bite you, wants to sting you, wants to irritate you. Yeah, anyway, that's a sidetrack. So if you see me constantly brushing, it's mosquitoes that I'm enduring at the moment. Yes, and they had their slight variations of cycles and calendars that they worked with, because not all of the land had the same geography, had the same plants, had the same animals, had the same temperature, had the same amount of rain. There was such a vast, and there still is, such a vast variations of geography on these lands. And so your cycles are all centered around what is the land doing, what is it needing, and how can we live with it. So yeah, the purpose of this vlog is to remind us to observe how the Gregorian calendar serves us in its time, its frame of time, and or are we resonating with a different calendar, with a different cycle. When you think about time, and you think about the time in a solar and a sun perspective, it's often observed in many, maybe not all, cultures and peoples of being quite masculine in how it works. And then when you think about Lunar, the moon, and that cycle, and again in some cultures and some peoples, they refer it to a more feminine kind of cycle. And when you also think about the human body as it is today, and when you are masculine embodied person, you often run on a 24-hour hormonal cycle. And then if you are in a feminine embodied body, and especially so if you're in a menstruating cycle of your life, you will often be going through roundabout, give or take, 28-day hormonal cycle. So you can see how a lot of the way in which the society of modern society operates on this 24-hour cycle, which may work very well if you are having a lot of masculine, what we would deem masculine hormones going through your body on a regular basis. When you are not experiencing that, that's not what you have been born with, it can be a little more challenging to try and keep up with this 24-hour cycle when your natural state is a 28-day hormonal cycle. So, that's just also another thing I wanted to remind us as well with these cycles, that we either intentionally or unconsciously are working with. You're welcome to leave any comments, questions in the comment section down below. You can also contact me privately through a number of different platforms. The links for those are in the description box below if you're watching this on a platform like YouTube. And I will see you again soon.